Please, don't send us away. The rancher froze when he saw what the old couple hid. The morning sun beat down on the rolling fields of Red Creek Ranch, its golden rays cutting through the cold bite of early fall. Dust rose in lazy spirals from the dirt road leading to the old farmhouse that stood near the edge of the prairie, its white paint faded and peeling, its roof sagging like a tired old hat. Most folks in Dry Creek County knew the place, or at least they thought they did. From a distance, it looked abandoned. Shuttered windows, late summer weeds strangling what once must have been a bright flower garden, a rusted tractor half buried in tall grass. But if you listened closely in the quiet hours before the town stirred, you could hear laughter, faint, creaky, full of something close to hope. That laughter belonged to Elias and Mabel Wright, an elderly couple whose lives had been woven into that weather-worn farmhouse for more than 5 decades. They were the sort of people whose presence in a community was quieter than a whisper but felt deeper than any shout, the kind who baked pies for bake sales, rescued stray cats, and waved to everyone they passed on the dusty roads. Yet that morning, their laughter did not come easily. Inside the farmhouse kitchen, Mabel pressed her trembling hands against the chipped blue tabletop, her knuckles whitening. Elias stood by the window, staring out at the ranch that had been his family's for generations, his shoulders stooped but his eyes still sharp as flint. "We can't keep this up much longer," Mabel whispered, her voice fragile as dry leaves. "The bank is breathing down our necks. Sheriff's already been by twice." Elias exhaled slowly and closed his eyes. "I know, Mabel. I know." His voice was low, as though he was speaking into the wind. "But I swear, we'll figure something out. We have to." Mabel's eyes filled with tears she refused to shed. She knew how stubborn Elias could be, a trait that had carried him through droughts, blizzards, and years when the ranch barely turned a profit. But this was different. This was something that had no easy answer. A stranger on the prairie. The news came on a Tuesday. Ranchers didn't usually pay much attention to Tuesday mornings, but that particular one brought word that unsettled every family within 50 miles. A new company, Highland Harvest Development Corp., was offering to buy up old ranch properties, promising new investments, jobs, and a bright future for Dry Creek County. Old ranches like Red Creek were eyed with cold precision. Some were already signed over. A few families had left town with heavy hearts but fat checks. Others, like the Wrights, held on to memories and deeds, locked tight in a lonely battle they weren't sure they could win. At the local general store, conversations buzzed like flies around a fresh wound. "Elias Wright better take that offer," said Tom Benson, leaning against a dusty shelf. "He ain't gonna make it through the winter with that mortgage hanging over him." "Maybe so," replied Martha Benson, adjusting her scarf. "But that place has history. You can't put a price tag on generations of sweat." Word traveled fast in small towns, and soon enough, the Wrights received an official notice, a polite, typed letter suggesting that their property would be better utilized if sold, asking them to consider the offer before winter. It came with a deadline. Mabel folded the letter with trembling fingers. "They want us out," she said softly. "They want our home." Elias didn't answer right away. He stared at the floor, the years etched in silence between them like rings in an old oak stump. Finally, he looked up, his gaze steady. "We're not leaving," he said. "Not unless we have a reason we can't stay." Hidden truths. Days passed with the pressure of uncertainty hanging over the Wrights like storm clouds. Sheriff Dalton stopped by again, offering sympathy cloaked in official language. "They're pushin' hard," Dalton said, leaning on the fence. "Developers have deep pockets. Folks don't like fightin' deep pockets." Elias nodded. "We'll do what we gotta do. What about selling some of your land? Smaller parcels. Maybe that eases things." Elias shook his head. "Then they carve up the heart of what we are. Mabel and I, we built this together." That night, Mabel and Elias sat by the fire. The wind blew cold outside, rattling the windows like a restless spirit. They spoke little, each absorbed in memory and fear. Finally, Mabel broke the silence. There's something I haven't told you. Elias raised an eyebrow. What is it? Mabel hesitated, her gaze fixed on the flickering flames. She reached into her lap and pulled out a small, worn envelope. The edges were frayed, the handwriting faded but unmistakable. It's from your father, she said. Elias's expression changed, a mix of surprise and hesitation. His father had died years ago, long before taxes and droughts and developers ever threatened Red Creek Ranch. Why would there be a letter now? Mabel handed it to him, her hands shaking slightly. You never opened it. Elias took the envelope, his thumb brushing the old paper. The date stamped on it was over 30 years old. I never had the heart, he murmured. Mabel watched him unfold the letter. The room seemed to grow still, as though the walls themselves held their breath. The letter read, Son, if you're reading this, then I knew I'd be gone before you were ready. You and your mother built this place with grit and heart. There's something I never told you, something that could change everything. In the north pasture, beneath the old oak, there's buried land deeds, old titles that predate the bank's claim. You'll know the tree by the twisted limb that looks like a hand reaching for the sky. Dig there, and you'll find what I mean. Elias's brow furrowed as he read and reread the words. Mabel watched his face shift, disbelief, wonder, cautious hope. Do you think it's real? She asked. Elias folded the letter and placed it inside his jacket. If it is, he said slowly, then maybe we have a chance. The search begins. The next morning broke clear and cold. Elias and Mabel drove out to the north pasture, a place they had seen 1,000 times but never looked at with such importance. The oak tree stood tall and crooked, its branches like ancient arms raised in silent prayer. Elias stepped down from the truck, Mabel at his side. The ground was hard with early frost. They began to dig where the twisted limb cast its first shadow, an awkward, gnarled shape against the earth. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher and the soil grew warmer beneath their shovels. Doubt not at them both, maybe the letter was just a memory, a father's fanciful hope. Then, with a dull thud, the shovel struck metal. Elias's heart thumped so loudly he thought the world might hear it. He knelt and brushed the dirt away, revealing a rusted metal box. With Mabel's help, he pried it open. Inside were old land deeds, maps, and legal documents, titles that extended back generations, predating the bank's mortgage and several competing claims on the property. They were faded but legible, stamped and sealed the way only old legal papers can be. Elias held them with trembling hands. This could mean everything, he whispered. Mabel's eyes filled with tears, not of fear, but relief. They hurried back to the farmhouse to call their lawyer. Fight for home. News of the discovery spread quickly once the lawyer took up their cause. The new titles had legal precedence over recent claims, and suddenly the developers' pressure lost its weight. But the fight wasn't easy. Court dates were set. Appraisers scrutinized documents. Highland Harvest sent lawyers in suits with slick smiles and bottomless briefcases. They argued, questioned, and attempted delay after delay. But the rights had something stranger and more powerful on their side: history, truth, and community support. Townsfolk rallied around them, bringing casseroles, letters of support, and even testifying in court about the importance of preserving the ranch. Red Creek Ranch isn't just dirt and fence posts, said Tom Benson during one hearing. It's heart. It's legacy. It's a part of who we are out here. When the final verdict came in, the courtroom was packed. The judge looked over the old deeds, then at Elias and Mabel. This court finds in favor of the rights, the judge announced. The property rights, supported by valid historical titles, shall be recognized. Any claims otherwise are hereby dismissed. A cheer rose like thunder. Mabel wept openly. Elias's face was a mixture of disbelief and pride. They had won. The hidden gift. That night, the community gathered at Red Creek Ranch. Long tables were set up under strings of lantern lights. Homemade pies were passed around. Music played softly, a fiddle, a guitar, and voices raised in laughter and song. Elias stood before the crowd, Mabel at his side. "I never thought I'd see the day," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "This place meant everything to my father, and it means everything to us. Thank you for standing with us." People cheered, hugging one another. Under those lights, it wasn't just a celebration of land, it was a celebration of life, of perseverance, of community standing together against forces that would erase their history. Late that evening, after the crowd thinned and laughter softened into contented murmurs, Elias and Mabel walked out to the porch. "It was the letter," Mabel said quietly. "Your dad knew what he was doing." Elias nodded and looked up at the stars blinking like distant lanterns. "Maybe," he said. "But it took all of this, all of you, to turn it into more than just paper." Mabel leaned her head on his shoulder, the night warm despite the cool wind. Red Creek Ranch was theirs, not because of deeds, but because of heart. And that was something no developer could ever buy. As the night grew quiet and the lanterns slowly dimmed, the old couple stood hand in hand on the porch of the home they had almost lost. In that silence, they realized something deeper than words. A home is not built with wood or paper, but with years of love, sacrifice, and unbreakable faith. Red Creek Ranch was never just land, it was their entire life. And at last, their life was safe. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with us for more emotional stories that remind us what truly matters. Subscribe for more videos.